Good evening, my friends. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas and holiday season. Now it's Friday, the day after Christmas, December 26th, so we must get back to our routine. And we continue with Mystery in White, Chapter 17, Reflections of the Past. But Lydia did not need telling. She already knew. After finding Thompson's bedroom empty, she had returned to the top of the stairs just as the delirious man had crumpled into David's arms at the bottom, and now she came flying down. "It's a miracle only one of us is off his head," she gasped, half hysterically. "I'm not guaranteeing how much longer I'll last." Fortunately, Thompson gave them no trouble. His babbling ceased, and they quickly got him to his new quarters on the drawing-room couch. The bedclothes, with which he had wrestled, were brought down, and Lydia placed them over him again. But when it was suggested that he should not be left alone, and that she should act as his night nurse, she hesitated. "I'm game to do whatever's best," she said, "but I can be spared for the job, possibly? I've got someone else to look after, you know, Miss Noyes." "She was nervous upstairs?" queried Mr. Maltby. "Who wouldn't be?" she answered. "I've got to get her out of bed, too." "Why's that?" exclaimed David in surprise. "Don't ask me, my dear. She's the one to tell you. My own explanation would only just be the bald one, and that the bed is haunted." "Eh? Haunted?" cried Mr. Hopkins. "Yes, haunted," responded Lydia. "The bed gives her strange feelings and pains in her stomach, so I've stuck her in the armchair. What's going to be the next move? Ours is a nice house. Ours is." Mr. Maltby looked thoughtful. They were standing in the hall, and his eyes moved toward the watchful old gentleman on the wall over the fireplace. David received a queer impression that the live old man was asking a mute question of a dead one. "What is she doing now?" Mr. Maltby inquired. "Waiting for me," answered Lydia. "Then you'd better go up to her." "And what are you going to do? About him?" She nodded towards the drawing-room door, which was ajar. "And other things." "I'm going to see about the other things," replied David grimly. "You're not going out?" "Got to, if I can. Just a little way." "Expect you're right, but for God's sake, be careful." "Don't worry. Better wait until we know how Miss Noyes is," advised Mr. Maltby, and added as Lydia turned to mount the stairs, "It is only the bed." "You mean that's worrying her?" "Yes. She hasn't mentioned anything else?" "Nothing about the room itself." No. But what?" "She's a funny little thing, all nerves and no admission. She doesn't admit to her nerves till you drag things out of her. I had to drag this. Yes, she's sensitive. I wonder whether it would be better to have her down here." "Much better," agreed Mr. Hopkins, "if we're going to sit up all night." "Oh, then you don't think of returning to your own room?" asked Mr. Maltby dryly. Well, the way things are working out, it might be a good idea if we all stick together. More companionable, you know, knowing where we all are." "Well, I'll see how Miss Noyes feels about it." "Will you?" "Miss Carrington," said Mr. Maltby. "I'll come up and lend a hand if she wants to return to the happy family," added David. "Right, I'll tell her," replied Lydia. "But she may not need your help this time. Her footprints, or her foot's improving. Her injured foot, that is." She vanished up the stairs. "Interesting about that bed," murmured Mr. Maltby. David moved to the drawing-room, opened the door, and poked his head in. Thompson was lying quietly on the couch, his form flickering in the firelight. None of the fires had been allowed to die down. They were the warm spots in a house of chills. "Is he all right?" asked Mr. Hopkins, as David turned back to the hall. "Okay," replied David. "We owe him one for the shock he gave us," said Mr. Hopkins. "What did he mean about that crash?" "A delirious person never means anything," returned David. "On the contrary, Mr. Carrington, a delirious man always means something," remarked Mr. Maltby. "But the meaning is usually obscure. Nothing in existence is without meaning, or result. If you dream that you are punting on the Amazon with a toothpick, the dream will have both reason and consequence, though you may never become conscious of either. The one thing I have learned in this house, Mr. Maltby, answered David, is never to argue with you. Hello, here comes Lydia. Well, what's the news from the first floor front? Reinforcements wanted? Yes, please, responded Lydia from the stairs. We held a lighting conference, and we decided to retreat to the base. David found Jessie standing on one foot by the chair. She was trying to prove how much better she was, and she declared that she no longer needed to be carried. He waved her objections aside, however, lifted her small weight in his arms, and carried her down to the dining room, depositing her in a chair near the door. What's the matter? He exclaimed suddenly. She appeared on the verge of collapse. I don't know, she gasped. Please, somewhere else. Without understanding, he complied quickly, helping her to another chair, and waiting for an explanation that did not come. She just sat and panted. Good Lord, I've hurt her, he murmured with an anxious penitence. She did not seem to hear him. Her eyes were closed. Let alone. No, let her alone, came Mr. Maltby's abrupt voice. Don't worry her. I'll deal with this. He had been standing by the chair Jessie had just left, regarding it fixedly. It was a chair that had not previously been used. Unlike the rest, it had slender wooden arms. Now, all at once, he darted to the table. Jessie's eyes were still closed, and she did not see the object he was bringing towards her, but the others saw it. It was Exhibit A, the hammer. While Lydia stared at it, she had not seen it before, and knew nothing about its significance, and while Mr. Hopkins fell back upon the chronic necessity of mopping his forehead with his handkerchief, David fought an impulse to rush at the old man and seize the hammer from his hands. He said afterwards that at this moment he felt almost murderous himself, not because he distrusted Mr. Maltby, but because the idea of death had suddenly filled the air, making it nauseating and stifling. He could not bear the thought of the hammer, and that it was on its way towards Jessie with her eyes closed. He did not move. However, something held him motionless. He remained rooted to his spot even when Mr. Maltby raised the hammer slowly, and slowly touched Jessie's forehead with it. Her eyes opened, the pupils dilated with unspeakable horror. Then something snapped within David, and he leapt forward. As he did so, the old man retreated a pace and brought the hammer quickly behind his back. Mr. Maltby's eyes never left Jessie. It was that invisible line of contact that stopped David's onrush. He felt that if he had passed through it, he would have been scorched. What was it? Asked Mr. Maltby quietly. A hammer, came Jessie's response. Her voice was flat and toneless. What happened? It hit me. Did it hurt? Yes. What do you feel? Nothing. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. You are asleep. Yes. Sleep. Sleep. Her eyes closed again. When she opened them, she was on the couch in the hall. She raised her head and looked around muzzily. Where? She murmured. I thought... Lydia, seated on a stool near her feet, quickly banished an anxious expression and smiled at her reassuringly. A little way off, and rather flabby, form of Mr. Hopkins lolled limply in the chair. He was dozing fully, emitting tiny snores. Mr. Maltby was in the drawing-room, listening. What's happened? Asked Jessie. Nothing, replied Lydia. Go to sleep. Yes, but he didn't carry me into the dining room, did he? You remember that? It was Mr. Maltby's question. He left the drawing-room as he spoke and approached the couch. Yes. And then? Where is he? What do you remember after Mr. Carrington took you into the dining room? Lydia noticed that Mr. Maltby's voice was very different now from the voice he had used in his previous interrogation of Jessie. It was no longer compelling and monotone. It was human and encouraging. I'm not sure, replied Jessie. My head aches. Yes, I remember he... She stopped suddenly. He put me in the chair, she whispered. The hall clock began striking. She counted the chimes. 11, she exclaimed in surprise. Have I been asleep an hour? I expect I dreamt it. Can you hear the dream? Asked Mr. Maltby. But I only remember a little more, and I'd rather not remember it, she answered. Why not? Didn't you like the chair? How did you know that? Well, you said that you'd rather not remember it. Of course, so I did. No, it was horrible. I couldn't stay in it. In what way horrible? I can't possibly describe what it felt like. Angry? Angry. No, nothing like that. Jealous? No. As though you'd been hit? No. What makes you say that? Dizzy? Sick? Breathless? Yes, she exclaimed. Breathless. Pain anywhere? Dull? Sharp? Heart thumping? No. Just the opposite. I remember now. There was a pain, and I thought my heart had stopped, she added. It's thumping now, though. Lydia glanced at Mr. Maltby. Let's postpone the cross-examination, she suggested. I think she's been through enough. There is just one more question I want to ask, replied the old man, and turned back to Jessie. You thought for an instant that your heart had stopped. In that case, you would have been dead. It felt like that. But you are not dead, so you need not worry on that score. Were your sensations similar to your sensations in the four-poster bed? Jessie looked at him, wide-eyed. Yes, no, I don't know. It was the same pain. She shuddered. Please, I don't want to talk about it. Let's talk about other things. How's poor Mr. Thompson? Has he done any more sleepwalking? He's sleeping, but not walking. In the drawing room, replied Lydia. And Mr. Carrington? As no one answered her, she repeated the question sharply. Where is he? Is he all right? He's just having a look around, said Lydia. He'll be back in a few minutes. For Jessie's peace of mind, she did not add that David's look around had lasted for 3/4 of an hour. Chapter 18. What happened to David? When David left the house by the back window through which Smith had preceded him to begin his overdue search for the cause of the murderer's scream, both the front and back doors were blocked, but the mounting snow had only just reached the level of the window ledge, and it was possible to clamber out onto the white slope. He found, to his relief, that the flakes were descending a little less thickly. This was one crumb of consolation in the unsavory but necessary journey. He rolled down the slope at an uncomfortable pace, and his first job on reaching the bottom was to pick himself up and expel the mountainfuls he had taken during the roll. Then he looked about him for a clue to his next direction. 2 sets of footprints grew dimly into his vision as he lowered his head to peer down at the snow. This was Embarras de Richness. One set continued straight on, towards trees, and the other curved round to the right. He chose the latter because the prints were more distinct, and had therefore, assumedly, been more recently made. That led him a zigzag dance, almost as though they were trying to shake him off. First they slanted backwards towards the house, but then they reached the bank of the snow that obscured 3/4 of the back door. They turned away abruptly for about 10 yards, and then turned back again. After that they zigzagged confusedly and uncertainly, suggesting that a person who had made them had been in a doubtful or furtive mood. Suddenly David gained an impression that something was wrong somewhere, and after peering at the prints more closely, he found out what was wrong and called himself every name under the sun. The toe marks were not pointing ahead of him, but towards him. Blithering idiot, he thought. I'm tracing this trip the wrong way, backwards. He paused to work it out. Did he want to find out where that person had come from? That might be interesting, but it was more important to find out where that person had gone to. Wherever he had come from, he was evidently made to tour round most of the house, reaching, eventually, the vicinity of the back door. And then? Were there other tracks, the tracks leading straight to the trees, a continuation of the journey? Can't be, reflected David. Those other tracks were made first. He tried again. How about this? I'm not on Smith's track at all. Smith made the track towards the trees. The person who made the track I am on now is some other person who came along a little while after Smith's flight. Why did he come along? Did he hear that scream? And then did he creep out from where he was and where he was hiding? Sneak around the house and try to see or hear something through the windows or the doors? It was not a pleasant theory. If the person were the man or woman Mr. Maltby had seen flying from the house before tea, one of whom had lost the sinister Exhibit A, the eavesdropper might have overheard some personal views and personal news. Yes, but they might still be hanging around here after this time, he wondered. Wouldn't they get clear as soon as they jolly well could? And why would only one of them? Why not both? He gazed at a single track of prints. They might have been looking for each other, or for the hammer, or they might have returned for something they needed in the house. The last idea pulled at him sharply. He recalled that he had left the back window open, and that if the track to the trees had not been made by the person who had sneaked round the house, he had come upon no other evidence of any continuation of that person's journey. The person might have been lurking nearby, concealed while David was rolling down the snowbank and waiting. Quickly, he retraced his way, no longer following the trail's irregularities, but making as directly as he could for his original starting point. When he reached the spot, his anxiety was set at rest. The slope of the snow, which now had rolled, bore no fresh footprints or marks, and the obvious assumption that no one had ascended it during his absence. But as he turned from his welcome discovery to look at the track towards the trees, a fresh shock awaited him. Beside the fading footprints was a second set. They were clear and well defined, and had been there 5 minutes ago. No, they had not been there 5 minutes ago. His mind worked rapidly. In response to this startling development, he was convinced that now somebody had watched him roll down the snowbank and had waited till he vanished around the house before continuing an interrupted journey. Well, now he had to continue his own journey, and without any particular relish for the job, he made for the trees. This is the way Smith went, he thought, plowing through the deep snow that seemed to be trying to hold back his feet as they sank into its soft grip. And soon I shall reach the spot where Smith screamed. He reached in 2 minutes. If he had not been warned, he might have passed it by, but Mr. Maltby had planted a picture in his mind that made it impossible for him to miss the original, and he recognized the grim mound as soon as he saw it. It was just beyond the first fringe of white-clothed trees, a little to the side of a narrow lane that wound between them. He stared at the mound, gleaming gloomily at him like a pale grave, and felt slightly sick. Was there really someone beneath that significant shape of snow? And was it really his duty to dig that someone out now? Now it had come to the point. He wondered just exactly where his duty lay, and what service he would perform by exposing the tragedy. The form beneath the snow was lifeless. Where could he take it if he uncovered it? To the house, to add to the existing horrors there? He doubted whether in any case he had the strength to carry the burden. Yet to uncover it and leave it where it was would merely be to give it back to the snow again. Suddenly he decided on another course. He did not know whether he was choosing simply the easier or the better path, and he refused to explore that either ethical problem. He decided to continue along the lane in order to overtake whoever else was upon it, for the new footprints still punctured the white way, or, failing that, to try to establish contact with the outer world. the snow increased a little, and the transition from more or less open land to thickly wooded lane made the going difficult. The trees they were gloomy, and into the feckled darkness like giant ghosts they went. And as the lane did not run straight, but wound through them, they seemed to be playing an ironic game with the lonely intruder by continually moving and flitting their way into his way. He walked right into one before he realized he had strayed from the track. The branches brushed his forehead icily. It took him 3 minutes to find the lane again, and he swore at himself for losing time. The unknown person ahead of him must have gained a valuable advantage during those wasted minutes, and in order to make up the deficiency, David tried to increase his pace. The result was a header with more mouthfuls of snow. I am having a lovely Christmas Eve, he reflected as he clambered to his feet. How long do I go on before I give up? The gloomy house he had left behind seemed like a haven of delight by comparison with the lonely, inclement region he was now traveling through. The house contained creeps, but it also contained warm fires, comfortable chairs, excluding the dining room chair Jessie had first sat in, and above all, people here. He merely had the company of specters. He began to wonder whether it was a specter he was tracking. Whether material or ethereal, his quarry refused to reveal itself, though the marks of its journey continued like the clues of a paper chase. I suppose I'll be able to find my way back, thought David suddenly. On the point of pausing to consider his position, he spied something ahead of him at last. For a moment, in his bemusement, mental condition, he actually thought it was a ghost, for it seemed to flit out of the trees and then to flit back again, as though propelled and withdrawn by some occult agency. The retreat had been swift and unexpected as the advance, but then the form reappeared and remained motionless. It had turned in his direction, and it waited without moving while he hurried forward, and when he was near enough to distinguish its definite human figure, new emotions began to replace the old and to give his numb brain a fresh impetus. The new emotions were surprise and anxiety mixed with a wholly selfish secret pleasure. The figure was that of a girl in evident distress. Quickly his sympathy passed from himself to her. "Hello," he called out, making his voice as hale and hearty as he could to counteract the uncanny atmosphere, through which it echoed. "In trouble?" "My God, yes," came the girl's response. The voice was cultured and sent a little warm thrill through him. "What is it?" he asked. "I'll help." He had reached her by now, and had received his first glimpse of her beauty. Some may have thought Lydia more beautiful, for Lydia possessed a brilliance that could disturb the night and rest of many men. But a brother is never a true judge of his own sister, and to David this girl's beauty transcended Lydia's by 1,000-fold, even though her features were not clear to him in the darkness. He was conscious, however, of the softness of those features, of the delicate contours, and of the long lashes and framed the anxious eyes. He was also conscious of the depth of the eyes as they shone through their anxiety with new hope. "This way," she gulped. "Our car's stuck. My father, I'm afraid he's ill." A few moments previously, David's mind had been swamped with problems. Now they all vanished in the girl's. Ghosts, screams, corpses, murderers, all became secondary matters beside the girl's distress, not because it was more important in the scheme of things, but because the strange power that lies in a woman to disturb a man's balance and eliminate his sense of proportion. She turned and led him along the lane from which she had appeared. She had not, as he had first imagined, been materialized from the trees, but had come from a fork on the right. A little way along the fork, Tilted into a ditch and half submerged in snow was a small saloon car. Whew, murmured David. When did this happen? About an hour ago, answered the girl. At least I think so. I've lost count of time. And your father's inside? Yes. Right, I'll get him out. But to his surprise, she laid a detaining hand on his sleeve. No, wait a moment, she exclaimed. Why? He's all right in there. I mean, he's gone to sleep. If we wake him and get him up on the road, what will we do? You mean he's better where he is till we decide? Yes, only of course, I want you to have a look at him. The door was jammed. The girl got out somehow through a window. David peered into the car and managed to get sufficiently close scrutiny of the elder man in the corner to satisfy his immediate anxiety. The man was breathing quietly and gave no outward sign of being distressed. He seems all right, he said reassuringly. Did he get a knock? No, but you said he was ill. Well, he had a shock. My mind isn't working well. I think I'm still a bit confused. And then the weather. He can't stand much. You've had a shock too. Yes, both. It was madness to come out, but he insisted. I mean, on a night like this, they told us we could never do it. Once he makes up his mind, though, you can't move him. I think I'm talking too much. I think you need to talk, he replied, and I certainly want to hear all you've got to say. Where are you trying to get to? A house called Valley House. Do you know it? She asked. I'm afraid I don't. I'm a stranger in the neighborhood, as they say. So am I. I don't know it either. I've never been there before, but it must be somewhere near here. He came by train to Himmersby. That's the station for it, and then stopped at the inn. I thought we were going to stay there for the night. We ought to have, but Father suddenly got restless and instead insisted on trying to get to it. Once he makes up his mind, oh, I told you that. She gave a sudden little self-conscious laugh. You see, the silly state I'm in. I'm not usually like this, but the whole trip has sent me to pieces. We'll soon put the pieces together again. I think it has been here all alone for so long and waiting and nothing happening that has disturbed you. I'm better already now that I've met someone. What were you waiting for? Yes, I haven't told you. Father was driving. We couldn't get anyone to bring us, but they let us have the car, and Father said he knew the way. We got hopelessly lost, as you can imagine. And after getting stuck, I don't know how many times we finally landed in this ditch. What did your father do then? She did not answer immediately. It sounded like a simple question, but she seemed to have difficulty finding the right reply. Well, I don't think he knew what to do, any more than I did, she said. He has not been too well lately, and I expect the whole thing confused him. He knew she was holding something back, and wondered how he could draw it out from her. I suppose he got out of the car. No, he just, well, that's what's rather worried me. I don't think I can explain. Don't try if it hurts. She looked at him quickly. He loved her eyes at that moment. He found he was trying not to love her altogether, because that's just too ridiculous, he told himself. I think I'm rather lucky, she replied. Your understanding. Her voice became steadier, as though his understanding had erased some of the tension inside of her. I'll try to explain. You see, I've got to look after him. We was right, David smiled. She turned her head for an instant. When she looked at David again, there was a suspicious brightness in her eyes. Yes, now I'm sure I'm lucky. My father isn't what... You see, I'm stuck at once. He isn't the same as most people. Please don't misunderstand that. I only mean that he's apt to be dreamy, absent-minded, and sometimes I don't know whether he's ill or whether it's just like that. Lately, I've been more worried than ever. I wanted to go somewhere else for Christmas, but he wanted to come here. I don't know why. She stopped, astonished at herself. Why am I saying all this? She exclaimed. I can tell you, if you let me, answered David. Go on then. It's because it's been bottled up inside you too long, and the cork has just been bursting to pop. And because I'm lucky too, and I want to hear. Yes, perhaps, after the accident, he got, like I've described, dreamy and absent-minded. Really, almost as though he had a bad knock and it had stunned him. Only he hadn't. All he would say was, well, it's happened. Don't worry. It will all work out. Things of that kind. Till he got drowsy. I couldn't rouse him, and he went to sleep. David turned to the car again and once more poked his head through the window. The occupant was in the same position as before, breathing peacefully and, to all appearances, sleeping comfortably. There was a vague smile on his round, smooth face. David got an odd impression that he was a man who had not completely grown up. I don't think you need to worry about him at the moment, he said, turning back to the girl. I'm sure he's all right, but, of course, we've got to get him somewhere. And you, too. What was the name of the house you were looking for again? Valley House, she answered. They expect you there? Oh, yes. Perhaps they've sent out and are trying to find you. I don't think that's likely. But you said something about waiting. Yes, I haven't told you about that. A man came by here some while ago, and I called to him. If I hadn't, he'd have gone right by. He promised to get some help, but he didn't. That's what's the matter. Nothing? Replied, what's the matter? Nothing, replied David quickly. When was this? How long ago? I don't know. She returned. My watch has stopped, and I've lost count. 10 minutes? Oh, no, much longer. An hour? It must be nearly an hour. What sort of man was he? As she began to look startled, he added, I passed a man myself, and was just wondering whether it was the same one. A laborer, I should think, she replied. I couldn't see him very well. You heard his voice, though? Yes. And was that like a laborer's? Yes, common. Well, while David thought, that was Smith. Her next remark confirmed it. I didn't like him very much. He was in too great a hurry. It was partly because of him that I was afraid to go far from the car. I didn't want to leave Father alone. You were quite right, nodded David. It was a rotten position to be in, and so far as I haven't done very much to relieve it, by the way. Did you see anybody else after Smith? She started and stared at him in astonishment, and he mutely swore to himself for his slip. That's a habit of mine, he explained lamely. In our family, we always call common people Smith. Did you see anybody here after him? Only you. That means, reflected David, that the other person, the one I was following, didn't pass this way, but continued along the other fork of the lane. You don't mind if I don't believe that about Smith, do you? Came the girl's voice. Not in the least, replied David. So long as it doesn't worry you, then I would mind. Talking of names, could we exchange ours? Mine's David Carrington. Mine's Nora Strange. Thank you. Now the next step, Miss Strange, but the next step was provided with startling abruptness by Noah's father in the car. Suddenly opening his eyes, he called out, Who are you talking to, Nora? Is that Shaw? David's head swam as he recalled that Shaw was the name of the vanished servant. Chapter 19. Additions to the Party. For a moment or two, David could merely stand and stare. He had passed from the situation to situation, struggling to master each new development without deserting the last. But now a development had occurred that was beyond his logic to understand or his capacity to deal with. The world seemed to have turned topsy-turvy, and it would hardly have surprised him if the snowflakes themselves hadn't started going upwards. The man in the car had pronounced the same name as Shaw. That meant Their destination of these two people, stranded people, the Valley House, was the house from which David had come. That was for them. The fires had been lit, the bedrooms prepared, and the stores laid in. And that Shaw's two afternoon visitors had been in his master and his master's daughter, whose arrival had been delayed by the weather. But two entirely different individuals meant that Mr. Maltby's construction, or I should say reconstruction, fell to the ground. It meant something else as well, something for more immediate moment in assisting Mr. Strange and Nora to their destination. He would be taking them to a house in which he had 5 others that were trespassing. How, leaving all other considerations aside, would they receive the news? And how, all in a moment, could he explain it to them? Mr. Carrington. It was Nora's voice again. She had been watching him closely, though it needed no close scrutiny to discover his bewilderment. Something's the matter? Yes, something is, she stammered. Who is it, Nora? Called Mr. Strange again. Not Shaw, eh? Who is it? Just someone who's going to help us. Father, the girl called back. Don't worry, dear. Stay where you are for a moment. Then she turned to David again and, lowering her voice, asked, What? I've just come from the Valley House, he replied, deciding that simple truth was the only possible solution, though I didn't know that's what the name of the house was till now. How do you know it now? Shaw, the name of the servant. I see, of course. He's there. No, he's not. But he must be. Or do you mean he's out, looking for us? Not even that. The house was empty when we arrived. I, and several others. Our train got stuck in the snowdrift. We tried to cut across to Himmersby, lost ourselves, as you have done, and eventually staggered into your house for shelter. Do you mean they're there now? She exclaimed. They can't get away, he answered. But you were trying to. Something of the sort. I expect you think our behavior quite unforgivable. Oh, no, she interrupted. Of course not. Do you think tonight I'd hesitate to find any shelter I could to find for myself and my father? Whose house it was wouldn't matter. But I don't understand why the house was empty. Shaw should have been there. He wasn't. She thought for a moment, glanced back at the car. Her father was reclining in his corner again, waiting with almost uncanny patience, and then said, There's something else I don't understand, Mr. Carrington. If our servant wasn't there, and if you haven't seen him, how did you know his name was Shaw? Miss Strange, replied David, you are not the only and a very nice person. You are a very intelligent person, and that was a very intelligent question. You will go on being intelligent, please, and all these matters that wait till I get to your house. Get into your house. That's the first job, isn't it? Your coat is simply soaking, and your father needs a fire as much as I do, and as much as you do. I may say we've had a great cheek to keep the home fires burning. And as one of the intruders, you'll know, you'll find out there's my sister who is just aching to make some return for what I have received and have no purpose. You can be certain that she'll give you either help or you or your father want, you'll be helped. So will you trust me till then, and can we make a start? Of course I trust you, she answered at once. And you're quite right. You know the way. I hope so. Anyhow, we'll have a shot at it. With difficulties looming ahead, it was immense relief to find that Mr. Strange himself presented none. In fact, his attitude was unnaturally obedient, and after Nora had whispered a few words to him through the window, David stood tactfully aside while the whispered conversation was going on. He allowed himself to be helped out of the car and became perfectly passive as a member of the party. I suppose he hasn't had a knock, David wondered. He showed no signs of damage, and Nora had limited her physical results of the accident to shock, but he did not seem at this moment like a stubborn man who could make up his mind and then refuse to alter it. David was not surprised that Nora was worried over her father's condition and guessed that there might be even more, cause she had so far admitted that there was that possibility. "This is very good of you," were Mr. Strange's first words to David. "When you stood in the road and you turned up his coat collar, I knew someone would come along." "Well, I'm an optimist too, sir," answered David. "I've even told your daughter that I'm going to find a way back to your house." "Back? Oh, of course." She mentioned something about, his voice trailed off, and David and Nora glanced at each other. Nora's expression implied, "You see what I mean?" "Feeling all right for the journey?" inquired David. "Quite all right for the journey," replied Mr. Strange. "Nothing can interfere with the journey, not even, as you will note, a car accident." He turned to his daughter with a faint smile. "I was right at the end. I said we would get there." "We haven't quite got there yet, Father," returned Nora. "No, but we shall. It is fortunate we left most of our luggage at the station and only have our light bags. As a matter of fact, Mr. Carrington, that is the name." There was no alternative, because in the confusion at the station, the luggage got left behind. Once we blamed the war for everything. I recall that, living well, I went through the war. Tonight we blame the snow, though personally, in regard to the luggage, I'm inclined to think, however... "Let's start," exclaimed Nora nervily. "Yes, come along," answered David, "and I'm going to suggest that we link arms. It's easy to get lost." "A good idea," nodded Mr. Strange. "Over the top of no man's land, eh? Is it far?" Anxious to get as many points clear as he could before returning to further complications, David tackled one that had been bothering him. "Valley House is your place, isn't it, sir?" he asked. "It certainly is my place," agreed Mr. Strange. "No one can take that away from me." "Then you ought to be leading the way, not me," commented David. "In daylight I might do so," answered Mr. Strange, "although it is a long while, many years, since I was there. But tonight I got lost, and frankly I have no idea where we are. How long do you suppose it will take to walk?" "Well, continuing to be an optimist, I should say about 20 minutes to a half hour, probably nearer a half hour, but my times got mixed up, Miss Strange, like yours. That's just a wild guess." "I hope it's a good one," she replied, "or we won't be there before Christmas." "Christmas," repeated Mr. Strange thoughtfully. "Yes, Christmas." They had begun to walk, and David felt Nora's arm tighten slightly against it. Reaching the spot where the lanes forked, David gave a quick glance along the fork he had not taken and noticed the footprints he had been following, by now filled in, continued in that direction. This confirmed what he had gathered from Nora's information, that Mr. Smith had taken the right fork while the other person had taken the left. Who that other person was, and why he or she had not been accompanied by his or her companion, he now had not the slightest notion. They were now in a narrow lane, which he himself had come along, and the game of turning and twisting began. Conversation was postponed by mutual consent, as, with heads lowered, they grappled with the grim task of beating the blizzard. In spite of his optimism, which was alleged rather actual, David made a poor guide, and on 3 separate occasions they blundered off the route to find themselves in a white maze of towering trees and tangled foliage. On the third occasion, while he groped around for over 10 minutes in the freezing forest, David found himself nearly giving up hope. He had become acutely conscious that Nora was now also fighting panic. Mr. Strange, on the other hand, accepted the station with almost irritating calmness. Either buoyed by some secret philosophy he refused to share, or amused, or immune from emotion through numbness. Or perhaps his condition was due to a combination of both causes. He walked stiffly, and his frozen feet frequently stumbled. Rediscovering the lane at last, they met at once more fully and full of fury of the falling flakes. It was just a flurry of falling flakes. While a below-zero breeze rose out of nowhere and played dismal music on their backs, suddenly Nora felt a swift tug on her arm and almost fell against her guide as he pulled her away from the side of the lane towards the middle. "What was that?" she gasped. "Sorry," murmured David in reply. "I just thought you might trip over that mound." "We are nearly there." He had recognized the landmark. They emerged from the wooded lane into the open. The snow was working its way up to with full fury again. David had a queer sensation that the storm had been temporarily decreased by fate, so that this particular part of the program could be played. He could never have undertaken this journey, nor could others have undertaken theirs, if snowstorms had not been considered consistently and maintained its present height. "Much farther?" asked the girl, through half-closed teeth. "No," he answered, straining his snow-goggled eyes. "We'll probably see the lights in a minute. Hang on to me." A light developed as he spoke, like headlights of a bus in a thick London fog. It did not reveal itself until they were almost to it. It was the light of the back passage, shining through the still open window. "Home," murmured David, almost sick with relief. Okay, my friends, that is the end of chapter 19 and the end of our reading for tonight. We will pick this up again on Monday night when we continue with chapter 20. I hope you all have a restful weekend. Recharge your batteries after all we've consumed. All of our Christmas Eve and Christmas Day foods certainly have filled me up, and I am now starting my way back to physical conditioning. I managed to do, what was it? I managed to do 34 deep knee bends today, and only 14 push-ups though. So I'm in bad shape. I need to get in shape. So wish me well, wish me luck. I wish you the same, and we'll see you Monday night at 6 p.m. Good night. This has been Indiana Homes.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.